Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this new masterclass with our guest, Colin Rule, the guru of ODR and the master. So let's wait a couple minutes just to let other people to have the chance to connect, and you can start to write in the chat. The chat is open. Where are you connecting from? So we love to see people and read people locations from all around the world. Let's see. Hi from Rome, of course, Craiova, Toronto, London, Lago di Como is nice, Athens,
Wow.
Costa Rica, and Kabul. Hi, my friends from Afghanistan, Lyon, France, Russia, Boston, and Bologna, Lima, Peru. Hi, Ivan, my friends. Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, India. Hello from India.
I see a bunch of friends.
Yes.
Great to see everyone.
Great. Bologna, Turin. So, and we have again from Ukraine. So, Kenya. Hi, Kennedy, my friend. We have a lot of fellows from the Weinstein International Foundation, our very old good friends. We have again both Georgia from US and Georgia from Europe, Mexico and Albania and Kosovo. Really all around the world, really all around the world. And this is the beauty of this session, this masterclass, and actually is happened for the pandemic, because without it maybe we would have done these events. Let me start also live on Facebook, just to let other people to join us and to, let me see here. Oh, wait a couple of minutes. Okay.
Yeah, Leo, this week was the ABA Dispute Resolution Section Conference, obviously in the States. And last night, actually 2 nights ago, we did a social hour via Zoom. We had 150 people from all over the US. So I kind of feel like we should all have glasses of our beverage of choice, but I guess it's morning in California, so it may be a little early for that. But Ellen's got her mug, so that's good. Congratulations for the Chair's Award, Colin. Oh, thank you so much, Eddie. I appreciate it. Yeah, it was the Sander Award is a huge honor. Frank Sander is a hero of mine, so that was an unexpected but delightful thing. So I appreciate the kind words. Congratulations to you and to Debbie Masucci for the award. Good. I'm honored to be in her company.
Okay, so we are about 200 people from again around the world. Again, Florence. We have Philippines. Okay, nice. So I think Philippines is the most east. I think it's night, I guess, in really middle of the night in the Philippines. And rule of the house. So we will have a nice chat with Colin. He will give a little bit of a presentation about the topic of today, using IT, using video conference, especially video conference in mediations as an effect of this pandemic, and maybe give us some hints from the future. So you will be able to, I think, help us to look at the future of mediation online. And everyone, if you have questions, you can write on the chat the question. My colleagues and friend Adi Gavrila from Romania. Hi, Adi.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Help me to read questions. Sometimes you put so many questions at this time, it's very difficult to read for me all questions. And if you want to intervene and make a question yourself, you have to raise the hand, not physically, but there is an icon. Just if you go to participants on the top, on the bottom of the screen, there is you can see this participants list on the top of the chat. And so if you can raise the hand, your name appears on the top and we can unmute you. Of course, unmute. So everyone, of course, is muted now. Let's start. Colin is, again, thank you for your time, Colin. Colin is an old friend, and we met, I don't know, maybe beginning of this century or maybe last centuries, when everyone was pioneer on ADR, on ODR, and I was talking about ADR in Italy, and everyone laughed at me. Oh, that's too early for it. And while at the same time, Colin was talking about ODR, and maybe someone took him seriously. He was not laughing at him, and he took him serious. And he's a doer. He's not a talker about the ODR. And he started a huge project, in eBay, eBay and PayPal to set up the service. How to resolve online automatically millions and millions of disputes online without the mediators. And then he set up his own company that is very famous, Modria. Then Modria was acquired by a huge software house called Tyler, and now Colin is the vice president of the Tyler or Modria, the division of ODR in Tyler Technology. He's based where he should be, in the middle of Silicon Valley, San Jose. And thank you again, Colin, for your time.
Thank you so much, Leo. What a gracious introduction. And yes, we've been friends for a long time. I think we both have the gray hair to show probably how long
absolutely.
It's been. But good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Bonjour, buenos dias, buongiorno. I can't do all the other languages, but it's wonderful to see all your faces. I feel like this is the United Nations of mediation here. So how about when the pandemic ends, I want all of you to invite me to come to your homes, and I'll just travel around for the rest. That sounds great to me. Yes, I'm delighted to have an opportunity to present. Thank you so much for the invitation. As you say, Leo, when we first met, online dispute resolution, it was just, a couple nerds in the dispute resolution field said, well, how could you do this over technology? We would have meetings at conferences and there would be 3 or 4 people there. And Leo, you were one of the people who came to those meetings. So thank you for that. And I always used to say in those presentations, I would say, online dispute resolution is the future of alternative dispute resolution. And people would say, yeah, that's what the nerd would say. But little did we realize years later that we would have a situation like this where every mediator in the world, almost overnight, would be forced to become an online mediator. So my wife jokes that I'm kind of like the dog that caught the car. I've been barking at cars passing in front of the house for so long, and now I feel like, wow, I actually caught one. I sort of feel like the chorus girl in the back who's been dancing in the back row, and then they come back and say, the lead has broken her ankle. You in the back row, come up. You now have to dance the lead part. Are you ready? So fortunately, we've been working on this for a long time. So we have a lot of expertise and theory and things we can draw on to figure out how to do online dispute resolution right. So I don't want to focus on slides and just do slides all day, but I do have a couple slides that I've put together. Thank you, Laura. I will slow down. One of my faults is I get excited and I start to speak very, very quickly. So Leo, if you hear me speeding up, please just go.
Okay. No.
Más despacio, mi amigo. Okay, here we go. So let me click the magic button and let's hope that you are all looking at a screen that
Yeah.
says mediating online. Okay, great. So I want to start in a very specific place, and that is an acknowledgement that this is a crisis. As a nerd, as someone who loves technology, I've been told that sometimes when I do these presentations, I can sound somewhat ebullient, like somehow I'm excited about all of these things that are happening. And I want to start out by saying this is not a happy time. This is a sad time. There are thousands of people losing their lives. There are millions of people losing their jobs. I think we need to understand this not only within the dispute resolution field. I think we need to understand this for our parties as well. When I talk about all of the exciting opportunities with technology, people may feel like somehow I'm rooting for these changes, or somehow I'm a wartime profiteer. And I don't want to have that be the frame for this conversation. I think it's very important to understand this will be a very traumatic event for the world. And we need to understand the psychological ramifications of our parties. And we need to, as we say, meet our parties where they are. So that means understanding that the fear of financial risk, paranoia that anyone can get sick. I think, Leonardo, I know Italy has been hit very hard by the pandemic. The United States, we've been hit very hard as well. I believe that we will get through this and we will be stronger on the other side. But it's very important to set this frame. And again, if you look at, I think this is from last night, the global toll. I lived for 2 years in Eritrea, in Africa, and I'm very worried about what's going to happen with this pandemic when it gets into the developing world, when it gets into communities that maybe don't have as much money, about more vulnerable populations like prisons. So this is what's happening in the United States right now with the justice system. Essentially, the justice system has been shut down. We have many courts in the US, the ones in red, who have just started to say, okay, no more cases. We're a moratorium on cases. We cannot process them. You just have to wait until we reopen. And the point that I want to make is we're going to have a tsunami of disputes after this. All of the people who lost their jobs, all of the people who haven't paid their rent, all of the people who are trying to get out of contracts. My wife works in the food industry. All the restaurants are shut down. All of the chefs are out of work because everyone is staying at home. So we need to think, how can we build a system that will be able to respond to all of these disputes? I don't think any of us will have seen a crisis like this in our lifetimes. So we need to be creative. And the dispute resolution field, fortunately, is all about being creative and being flexible and responding to the need. So technology is just a tool to put into our toolbox. It can enable us to do things that we could never do if we had to do everything manually. So what I am arguing is we need to build a new justice system, a system that works the way the internet works, that leverages technology. And we cannot wait for the courts to figure this out, because the courts are not built to innovate. The courts are built to provide surety and security. And they are not going to be able to handle all of the cases in this tsunami. So all of us together, we need to come together and envision how can we respond. And I think ADR Center and Leo have been on the leading edge of innovation for this in many regions. But I look forward to working closely with all of you to make that response. Now, let me also speak to what online dispute resolution is. This is the definition that we have used for many years. It is the use of information and communication technology to help disputants find resolution to their disputes. The challenge is, now that ODR is becoming more commonplace, this definition is too broad. It doesn't really say what ODR is. It only says that it's the use of technology to do ADR. So now I feel there is a new consensus emerging around this definition, which in the United States was first drafted by the National Center for State Courts. but they define ODR as a public-facing digital space where parties can convene to resolve their dispute or case. Now, this is a little bit more specific than the other definition, but ODR encompasses many things. There's very futuristic, high-tech, artificial intelligence, blockchain, smart contracts. Those things are still around the corner. They're not here today, but they're coming. But then also we have Zoom, which works right now. This is amazing that we could all dial into this website and we can communicate and we can see each other's faces. So the question is not what ODR is today. The question is, what can ODR become? And we need to think not only, my grandfather always used to say to me, don't build your business where the highway is. Build your business where the highway is going. And I think we in the dispute resolution field need to take that advice and use technology to expand the relevance of our services and meet parties where they are. Now, I wrote in 2014, I wrote an article long before the pandemic, and they were asking about the future of dispute resolution. And in that article I wrote, I can easily envision a world a decade out where we reserve face-to-face interaction for only our most intimate friends and family members. The bulk of our professional and public lives will take place online. The idea of driving down to a doctor's office or a courthouse will seem as antiquated as getting your water from a well. And I thought that this would happen slowly over time, and people would make the choice to move their practices and their lives online. But now, obviously, the pandemic has forced all of us overnight. And what we are mainly relying on in this very sudden transition is video conference-based ODR. Now, Zoom is just one platform. There are many platforms. And I can also say, because I've seen some previews of new technology, video technology that is being created exclusively for lawyers and for mediators. And some of this technology is very, very impressive. So we will see which of these platforms gets traction. But right now, it is mainly Zoom. Zoom in the United States has become the new normal. I know in some parts of the world, it's more WhatsApp, but WhatsApp only allows for, I think, up to 8 parties. Other areas, they prefer tools like WebEx, or maybe they use GoToMeeting, or they use Google Meeting, or they use Microsoft Teams. I'm not saying that Zoom is the only option, or even that it's the best option. But I think the reason why video has appeared so quickly is because it feels very close to face-to-face. Yes, I cannot see all of your body language, but if I say something that's confusing, I can see Leonardo's face go, And then I say, maybe I need to explain that a little bit further. So 50% of communication is nonverbal. And when you only communicate textually, you lose a lot of that information. Video conferencing feels like you have that connection. And the Zoom technology is quite good. I can pin any of your video and I can see your faces big on my screen. It is not exactly the same as face-to-face, as you all know. You have chat. Chat is something that we don't normally have in a face-to-face meeting. So the ability to communicate textually, to send private messages, that can change the dynamic significantly. And also, it's different to look in someone's face and to look into a little video camera. You don't get the same rapport. You don't get the same connection. But it is becoming the new normal. My sons, who are both in college, they are on Zoom all day doing their classwork. Even middle schoolers, elementary schoolers in the United States are now using Zoom for their class. It is almost like it is the new telephone. And when you say to someone, hey, can we do this on Zoom? They know what you mean, and they say, yes, I have it installed. I know how to use it. It's not controversial anymore. I think also face-to-face mediators who have long resisted technology, because most of us who are mediators, we love people. We want to sit down at the table. We want to look in the other side's eyes. We want to put our hand on their arm if they get upset. The notion of moving all of that to an online platform can feel a little dissatisfying. But I think the video experience replicates that face-to-face experience as closely as we currently can replicate it, especially in light of the limitations from the pandemic. The other thing that a very powerful technology that people often forget about is the telephone. And there is a lot of research that shows that telephone-based mediation can be very effective. So for people who don't have access to high-powered technology, who don't have access to a good internet connection, it's very important for all of us to remember the phone is always there for us if we need a backup for some reason. So I'd like to speak just quickly, and then I've got more slides, but let's not do them now. We'll open it up for Q&A. I wanted to share a little bit about this new organization called iCoder, the International Council for Online Dispute Resolution. This is an international nonprofit that was created, spun out of the National Center for Technology and Dispute Resolution at UMass Amherst. And what iCoder does is it promotes best practices and ethical standards for online dispute resolution. And iCoder, our boards is from all over the world, and we have put together a series of guidance documents for video-based mediation. And they're available on the iCoder website if you'd like to visit, icoder.org. This is what they look like, the iCoder video mediation guidelines, and you can download them for free. We have other guidelines around video arbitration and online dispute resolution training, but I wanted to take a moment to walk through these guidelines because they represent the distillation of best practices from many of the practitioners that are members of iCoder, and any of you can apply to become a member of iCoder if you'd like to join the international online dispute resolution community. But the way we break down our guidelines is we have certain principles, but then we provide specific information about how to abide by those principles. So one of our principles is accessibility, making it easy for people to access services. And in our video mediation guidelines, under accessibility, we offer these 4 points. 1, confirming individually with each party their willingness to use technology for the mediation session. 2, ensuring that both you and each participant, you as the mediator and each participant, have an effective connection. So clear audio, adequate lighting, good bandwidth. 3, using a video conferencing platform that is free to parties, reliable, and easy to log into. That's very important. And number 4, sending reminders to your parties with login information to the video mediation session a minimum of 2 days before the session and 2 hours before the scheduled start time, so that they have access to the link so they can join. So we have other standards around accessibility, around digital accessibility for differently abled people, but this is specifically for video mediation. And I'm eager to discuss this with all of you. I'll just go through these and then I'll stop and we can open it to questions. Okay. Our second principle is competence. And what we say is, before you start your video mediation session, you should practice the software you're using before you utilize it with your parties and offer to try it out with the parties individually in advance of the session so that there are no surprises. Secondly, inform the parties what technology will be employed prior to the session, whether or not it's WhatsApp or Zoom or another platform. Also, learn the additional ethical obligations that come with meeting over video, and those are at icoder.org, as well as addressing the parties' ethical obligations around video mediation in your ground rules. And we're going to talk, I'm sure, about confidentiality and information security, but some of these obligations are not the mediators, they are actually the parties' obligations. So we can discuss those. Next, we talk about, Leo, I don't know, do you have a question that you wanted to ask?
Just finish, and then I have a lot of questions. I mean,
great. There's only 3 more slides, and we can revisit these too. I do urge people to download them from the iCoder website, and our conversation will focus on many of these points. But I'll just share them now. Confidentiality, let your parties know you will not record video or audio in your online mediations. That's very important because it's easy in Zoom to click record, but you need to reassure them that that's not going to happen for their sessions. 2, get a written commitment from the parties or an e-signed commitment from the parties in advance that they will not record audio or video nor take screenshots of the session. Also, if parties want to show a document or photo in session, have them share their screen instead of sending it to all of the participants. Because once it's emailed out, you cannot control access to the document and it can be forwarded to others. And then the other thing is, once all parties have joined, you should lock the room so others cannot join, or use a waiting room functionality to ensure that you have approval over everyone who can participate. All right, only two more, and then we can open the conversation. So in terms of fairness and impartiality and neutrality, you need to begin the session, the video session, with everyone's video and microphone on, as if they were in the room. You don't want to have a situation where you're communicating with the other party and the third party, the third person in the room, cannot unmute their microphone, because it creates an imbalance. If one party disconnects from the mediation, you need to suspend the session until they rejoin. So you're not communicating with the other party while the person that was disconnected is absent. Also, if a party's audio cuts out or becomes distorted, you need to notify them once the audio resumes and ask them to repeat what was said during the outage. Also, you should always have a backup option for sound, just in case. For instance, dialing in by phone. It's important to have that backup, because if your computer crashes, the parties may not be able to interact with you while you reboot. But if you have your phone, you can connect with them and then you can continue to communicate while you get back in. Also, join your meetings at least 10 minutes before to troubleshoot problems. You don't want to start dial in exactly on time, because then there may be other issues that will cause delays in the session. All right, last one, and then we'll open it up. This is number one issue that parties have communicated about the use of ODR, concerns around security. So if you are using a video conferencing platform, you need to ensure that it offers encryption. And it needs to be a secure platform, meaning others do not have the ability to access the information that's being communicated. You should also not use video conferencing systems that require information like location to be shared. And if you do use one of these applications, you should inform the parties that they have the ability to turn that off and explain how to do that. Also, you need to ensure that your video conference will not time out or close down after a certain duration. That can be very jarring to the parties. If they're in the middle of a communication and it's an important time, and then the video conference cuts out, that can really undermine their confidence. And the last thing we say for mediators is, when you are doing a video mediation, do not use speaker view, where you only see the face of the speaker. You should use grid view so you can see everyone's faces, so you can see the reactions from the non-speaking parties, and you can see if someone else joins the room. If you're in speaker view, if someone joins the room and they're quiet, you don't necessarily see that immediately. So I know I just commandeered the session to share these guidelines, and I'm eager to now start the conversation with all of you. So let me hand it back to you, Adi and Leo, and let's see what questions people have, and we can discuss all of these in more depth. So let me stop my share.
Wow, great. I mean, you gave us the checklist how to do a video conference. Let's go topic by topic. One of the main topic, I think, is how the mediator should, or if he should or she should, change her style in mediation versus face-to-face. Now in Italy, we have been in lockdown, strict lockdown for 2 months. We started this week we have two options basically to do mediation. And this morning was one of our mediators connected, Luca Tantalo, my colleagues. He was doing a mediation. He was doing a mediation with mask like that, like 6-7 people in a very large room, of course. And because he prefers, I know he prefers to not touch, but the physical is like me, old school mediator.
Old school, I like it.
The second option is video conference, but with video conference, I cannot use the sense of touch. I have to. So my kind of style now is in video conference stress all the other sense like hearing or the word. I try to highlight, mirroring or do open questions or active listening.
Yeah,
Active
reframing.
listening. A little bit stressed, a little bit more stress that I would have done face to face. Okay.
Mhm.
What do you think we should some tips how the mediators and also lawyers and parties, because it's not a problem of us, of course, but the lawyers, as I said, in Italy, and it's happening the same, tsunami of new mediations coming from renting, from businesses that have been affected by the economic crisis, and case pending in the courts. Our courts will be closed basically up to September, October, and there's a mess. So I want to, yes, okay, I'm reading, and Adia, help me to read any questions and give it something, the chance to Colin to reply how we should change our mediation style.
Yeah,
Leo,
well,
you
let me,
referred.
please, Adi. Yeah.
Sorry, just wanted to say that Leo refers to a trend of the question, some of the trends of the questions we see, which relates to building trust and reading body language. Just to reference, Dimitris is asking that this is important. How can we achieve this via screen? And Uma is saying that listening to underlying issues, to what is not said, getting to emphasize that's important. How can you do that in ODR? So this is one area of discussions.
Absolutely. It is inevitable that video-based mediation will change the style of the mediator. And some of those limitations are technological. One of the things that doesn't work with video conference is crosstalk. If a lot of people are talking at the same time, it's gobbledygook. You cannot hear what other people say. If we all were to start talking right now, it would sound like just static. You can't hear the other side. And many of the mediations I've done in person, there's a lot of crosstalk. There's a lot of, when you do active listening, you provide affirmative language, you say things, I understand. Let me stop you there. Let me ask you this question. Oftentimes, parties will engage in joint problem solving, and there's a lot of give and take. But there's an artificiality to online because it's actually, it's almost like the entire process occurs uninterrupted. So we often will begin our mediation process with uninterrupted storytelling, where one side talks and the other side has to listen. And then we say, okay, thank you. And now we go to the other side. It's almost like with video-based mediation, the entire process needs uninterrupted because the technology makes crosstalk so not very difficult to achieve. And that can also lead to a certain artificiality. It makes people feel like technology. The other thing is we have this camera staring in our face. They call it the unblinking eye. And we have to sort of sit here erect because even when, and this, it's very difficult for me sometimes to mediate when I see my own face. That never happens in the face-to-face process. Now, this is a good tip that I will give you. Zoom has the ability to hide your video. Other parties can still see it, but if you click on the 3 dots on your image, you can say hide self-view. And that means you don't have to look at your video. But what it does, it means that all of us are in like a mini TV studio. And we feel a little bit like we're presenting, we need to, and even when we're not talking, we still have the camera looking at us in our face. I cannot very casually just, sit like this. People will think I'm not paying attention. And I can't lean forward like this because that's very creepy. It's like I'm right there. And so I have to sit upright, erect here, and that can be very tiring. What we have found also, parties cannot be on a video conference for longer than 2 hours. It just turns your brain into mush.
I read a lot of articles on Zoom fatigue.
Zoom fatigue, it is. And if you have, so what I see what's happening with mediations is instead of doing one long day of 8 hours, these mediations are being broken up into many smaller, shorter meetings. So the mediator will say, let's meet for an hour this afternoon to talk about this issue. And then tomorrow morning, we'll meet for another hour and we can talk about the next issue. And what we're seeing is actually the parties like that. They move forward when things are segmented, because you don't have to take all of the time to drive across town and
You are
find
saying
parking
that
space.
instead of usually, face-to-face mediation that takes 5 hours, 6 hours, you should break down. I mean, if
Break it up.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you need a lot of patience from the mediator standpoint, as our friend Anastase from Rwanda is writing in the chat. Is a fellows from Rwanda, and he said, it's very difficult. It's difficult. You need your time, slow down.
I will say a very experienced mediator told me, who's now doing video mediations for the first time. She said, I'm getting more resolutions because my parties are getting tired of video. So in face-to-face, people will just say, well, no, I'm not ready to settle. Let's go get lunch and we'll come back. Whereas online, people get so tired of Zoom, they say, okay, let's just wrap this up. So maybe we can use this to our advantage, the exhaustion of our parties, to urge them to agree, because they don't want to hang out in Zoom for hours and hours. And I see some people asking about caucuses as well. I have a lot of opinions about that, but maybe I'll stop there. And Adi, you can.
Yeah.
Yes, please, Leo.
Go with the caucus. How we can use video conference, and if there are some platforms. I mean, I'm not paid by Zoom. I think you do, but
me neither. Me neither.
I used different platforms, Teams and others, but I think Zoom has the best user experience. There have been a lot of problems about privacy, and then we will go about privacy about Zoom, but I hope they solved that. But how can we use breakout rooms in Zoom or other platforms?
And Gabriel Colla is specifically saying, what can we do to switch from a joint session to private sessions with each party?
So Zoom does have the functionality of breakout rooms. And I think that's a very important functionality for.
Who suggested to Zoom to have these breakout rooms functionality?
Who's guilty?
I don't know, Leo. Yes, I will tell this story. The Zoom started, first office for Zoom was right across the street from my office at Modria. And I met the developers when they were just beginning. And I said to them, look, this could be very helpful for dispute resolution, but you need to add certain features. And they said, well, tell us, what would those features be? So one of the things I suggested was breakout rooms. And they put together actually a white paper very early on in Zoom on how Zoom could be used for online dispute resolution. So again, I did not create breakout rooms. I'm sure there were other people that asked them for features. There's other things that I would like Zoom breakout rooms to do. We were talking about door knocking. That was one of the things that I have not yet implemented. But yes, I am proud of the fact, if all of you have your breakout rooms because of me. So if you want to send me a thank you present, I will receive it. I'll post my address at the end of the call. But again, now I may be the person responsible for breakout rooms, but I will also say I have seen mediators use breakout rooms in a very confusing way sometimes. And sometimes it is better to not use breakout rooms. It's to do separate sessions. So to say to your parties, we're going to have a joint session that will happen today at noon for 1 hour. And then I'm also going to do a 30-minute session with party A and a 30-minute session with party B later, afterwards, not in the same room. Because the thing about caucusing face-to-face, obviously, you have to end the joint session, and then you send out one party and you caucus. And then you finish your caucus and you bring in the other party, you send out the other party. So you have to choose which you are going to do. If you do a breakout-based caucus, that means that one of the parties is waiting because you can only be in one room at a time. So I leave this to all of you to decide. Many mediators don't like caucuses because they're worried about the sense of maintaining impartiality, especially when you have, you spend 30 minutes with one party and 5 minutes with the other party. So some mediation trainers that I know, they say, avoid caucusing if you can. Another thing that's important to remember is your entire process does not have to be in video. You can have online conversations with parties, maybe through email or through another platform like CREC ODR, that is in parallel with your video process. So it doesn't mean everything has to be in the video conference. This is not an arbitration where everything is a joint session and everyone is logged in at the same time. So that can give you some flexibility where the parties may use these other channels to ask questions. And we talk about that in ODR. We call that concurrent caucusing. And that can be very powerful because you can keep the joint session going while you are caucusing. So that's a little bit of my advice on caucuses, but I'm curious to hear what other people think as well.
Yeah, and what about one recurring question is about privacy and confidentialities. How we can prevent then parties do not record sessions, or there is someone else in the room behind the camera. This is a problem, a real problem.
I will say the problem of someone else being on the other side of the camera, I hear that more from mediators than I've ever heard of it actually happening in a dispute. Because if someone is being coached by someone else, you can sort of see it in their face where they're, okay, you know, you can notice that someone is not paying attention. I think the issue of people recording, taking screenshots and things like that, that is a real issue. And we all hear so much news constantly about software platforms that are compromised by hackers. And the hackers come in and download all the credit cards and they copy everyone's private information. So this is an issue, even if you know that your system is secure, it is still an issue because your parties may feel concern about that. And that's why it's important to be transparent with your parties about this is the platform that we are using. This is what I am doing to keep your information secure. The other thing, our ICODER ethical standards say, if you believe that your email or your online dispute resolution platform has been compromised, you have an ethical obligation to inform your parties that that has occurred, even if that is going to be a very difficult conversation and they will be mad at you. You still need to let them know because they need to protect themselves potentially from the ramifications of that. So our parties are worried that when they type something or say something, that it will be recorded and then it will appear on Google in several years. That is why we need to use technology that we know is secure. Now, Zoom, there's been a lot of press around how Zoom is not secure. I have spent a lot of time looking at Zoom. I know their Chief Information Security Officer. I have attended calls where they've done updating their security. I believe that the Zoom platform is very secure so long as you follow the best practices that we have shared. Zoom has the ability to do a waiting room. Zoom has the ability to lock rooms, and that can prevent many of these issues from occurring where unauthorized third parties can join. Zoom has also released a new client, Zoom 5.0, and by May 30th, everyone is going to be required to upgrade to this client. And it has GCM encryption integrated into the client, which is a higher level of encryption than what they used before, which was what was called TLS encryption. So obviously WhatsApp and FaceTime, those provide end-to-end encryption, which is better than Zoom's level of encryption. But for most mediations, maybe if we are in the CIA or the intelligence services, we have to worry about these issues. But for most mediations, I believe the security of Zoom is it meets all of the ethical obligations we have as practitioners, so long as you follow the best practices.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Colin. Security, confidentiality, and privacy are obviously paramount for use of ODR and whatever platform used. Also, another area of questions, a number of questions refer to the signing. How do we sign? How do we sign documents? Just to give you a couple of examples, and then I'll let you comment, and maybe then we have a question asked by one of the participants. Rosa is saying, how do you resolve the issue of signing the agreement in a virtual mediation? Horace is saying, in Jamaica, the law requires physical signing How do we overcome issues like that? SEMA says, how do we sign the agreement? And also another question referred to legislation. How do we bring legislators on board?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a tough question. How do you bring legislators on board? Fortunately, most legislators, I think, looking at the pandemic, they understand the necessity. Oh, it seems like Roman has someone asking a question. Let me know if I can help out there, Roman. The question of e-signing, like there are many platforms that make this very easy, like DocuSign and Adobe Sign. All you have to do is create a PDF version of your document and highlight in the document where a signature is required. And with a single click, you can send that to the parties and they can go through, read the agreement, and then e-sign the document, and it will be returned to you. A signed copy of the PDF will be returned to you. Now, I know that not every jurisdiction in the world accepts these digital signatures. So in Jamaica, where they require a wet ink signature on the contract, that is a huge obstacle. And the question of how can we get legislators on our side, I think it's very important to change the laws to allow for electronic document signature. I remember, Leo, when I came to Rome, probably in 2003, maybe that was one of the times when we met, I learned that the Italian civil justice system, to resolve a case, on average, it took like 10 years to get the case through the system. Now, this has probably changed in recent years. Wow. And they explained that it was because they had to move paper documents from one office to another office 92 times before the case could be closed. And paper is a huge barrier to access to justice. So it is very important that we upgrade our systems to allow for electronic documents, electronic signatures. Many of us know if we reach an agreement in a mediation, and then we have to send out a paper copy of the settlement agreement to be signed and returned, sometimes people will change their minds while they're waiting for the mail to arrive. So e-signatures is a very powerful technology. I actually, in mediations, I will share my screen and I will send out the documents for signature, and we will watch each person sign and return. And then you get the green check marks and you know you can finish your session with a signed document. So I know there's more changes that need to happen in legislation, but that's where I think everything is headed.
Yeah, we have a question by Nana. I will.
Yes.
Go ahead.
We are hearing so useful information from you, Colin, today. We don't want to finish this webinar today. Really, for us, it's brilliant. So
And by the way, you are from Greece.
Yes, I am from
Nana.
Greece, and all this information was so useful, so useful. Thank you so much. So what I wanted to ask you is, can this process with uncertainty of privacy might be the case for the parties to keep information, secret and not reveal, the real information, because they are afraid that because of the technology, might not be kept, secret and private. What do you think?
Absolutely. The number one most precious thing for any dispute resolution service provider or business or government is trust. And trust takes a very long time to build up, and you can lose it like that. And it is very important that we take our ethical obligations very seriously and communicate that to our parties. And also that we use tools that live up to our ethical obligations. What worries me about online mediation is many mediators are using the tools that come installed on their laptops or on their phones, free tools. And they say, well, let's just use Google Docs, or let's just use email, or let's just use Skype. And they're not thinking about the security of the tools. If you send a document to a party via email, that party can forward that document to 100 people, and you will never know. Email is not a secure means of communication. So if we use these tools, we are opening ourselves to exactly what you are saying, Nana, which is we are not abiding by our ethical obligations to our parties. We tell our parties we will keep their information confidential and private and secure. But if we use tools that are not built in line with those ethical obligations, then we may undermine the trust in our profession and in our practice. And that is why I think we need to look very carefully at the tools that we use. And we need to start to build tools within the dispute resolution field that abide by our ethical obligations, because we have to defend. That is what iCoder is all about. We need to maintain the trust in ODR. It is very easy for someone to build a software platform and say, hey, come and resolve your dispute. But maybe I'm collecting information that I tell the filers that is confidential, and then secretly I am sharing it with people on the backside. And those parties do not know that I'm sharing that information. And maybe I'm getting paid for sharing that information. If that occurs, it will undermine the trust in dispute resolution for all of us, even if we had nothing to do with that. So we want to make sure that the ethical obligations we have in dispute resolution are lived up to. And that is what we are trying to do with iCoder. And I know all of you take your ethical obligations very seriously. So we need to join together to use tools so that we can say to our parties, yes, this is confidential, and I have done the homework to make sure that no problems will arise. So that doesn't mean no problems will arise, but we will minimize the amount of problems as much as we possibly can. So that's an excellent question, Nana.
A couple, last scene from Jamaica just reminded Chief Justice in Jamaica, actually under the civil procedure rules, authorized to issue practice direction, provide for documents to be sealed or signed by electronic means. So also in Jamaica, they can sign. Then they have a nice question from Kennedy, our fellows from, Weinstein fellows from Kenya. And he's talking about dress code. A mediator can impose a dress code. You know, there's this joke that we are dressed up here and with shorts, or maybe we are different locations. And how is it? I think it is important. How do you think there is a guideline on dress code in video conference?
Well, I never wear a blazer in my video conferences, but today I knew I was going to be video conferencing with Italians. So I put on my blazer because I know I went to a conference in, where was it? I think it was in Florence. Maybe you were there, Leonardo. And they had a comedian who did skits in between each presentation. And one of his skits was between an Italian businesswoman and an American businessman. And the Italian businesswoman was amazing. He played all the roles. And the clothes were perfect, her shoes, her hair. And the American businessman came in and his coat was like this and his glasses, hair was all messed up. And I went, oh no, that's me. That is the way I am. I'm very messy. My fashion is terrible. So I wore my blazer today. But I think that this is a good question, Leo. It really is. Video conferencing has changed the norms around interaction. And many people, when they get together for a mediation in downtown Rome, they will wear a suit. But if you get them on video conference, they show up and they're wearing a t-shirt and they're on the beach and
like a California.
They have not shaved. Exactly. In California, we say in Silicon Valley, the person in the meeting who is dressed most casually is the most powerful person in the meeting. So Mark Zuckerberg, everyone is wearing a suit except for Mark Zuckerberg, who is wearing a hoodie because he is Mark Zuckerberg. So I think we have to understand, maybe be a little bit more flexible. But if you have a party that shows up to a mediation and they are not wearing a shirt, maybe you say to them, you know, because it's 10 minutes early, would you mind putting on a shirt? We have some judges, we have court cases in the United States where lawyers have showed up for a video conference and they're in their bed in pajamas. And the judge is saying, what are you doing? So I will say a benefit of the telephone is you can be anywhere. You can be in pajamas in the bed. No one knows. We also had a Supreme Court case by teleconference, the first one in the United States, the history of the United States.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the court case, there was a flush. So someone on the call, no one knows who it was, In Zoom, you know who is flushing because there is a yellow box around the person who is flushing. So sometimes you have to just move on, let's talk about it. And I have also had video conferences where someone is sharing their screen and they finish their presentation and they forget that they are sharing their screen, and then they go over to their email and they go to their websites and they are clicking around. And it's good as the mediator to say, excuse me, you are still sharing your screen. Please stop sharing it, because maybe you will see something. I've also seen people present online and a message pops up from their wife or husband, and it says something that they do not want to share in the mediation. So these are new challenges that we have to navigate through in the world of video conference. We have to be a little bit more flexible with our parties. But I think it's good as a mediator to require your parties, please, be ready, have your hair combed, wear clothes. I think that's appropriate for mediators.
Yeah, our friend Jay Welch in chat reminds us, always wear pants. Always. You never know.
No, pants are optional. Well, you do not know what is going. The clothing retailer in the United States, Target, they have reported their sales of shirts and blouses are up 30%, and their sales of pants are down 40%.
Colin, one question from Rosa Abdelnour. Serving food and beverages has advantages. We all know all these things. What about when we're mediating online? Is it a good idea for the parties to have some food or coffee, for example, next to them in the session? Is that okay?
So first of all, I am someone, I do not like to listen to people eating. It is like fingernails on a chalkboard for me. So in my sense, please do not eat into your microphone. So what I do advocate is breaks in video meetings. If you have a 2-hour video meeting, you need to take a break after an hour and say, let's turn off our microphone, turn off our camera, let's take 5 minutes. Even if you just stand up and walk around the room, that is a time when someone can go to the bathroom, they can get something to eat, they can get something to drink. I don't think it's necessarily a good idea. As I just said, we had the social hour at the ABA conference. Mediating with a glass of wine, that can be dangerous because it depends on how many glasses of wine someone has had. So I do think
except in Italy, this is only out in Italy you can do it. Outside Italy, you cannot.
Italy has special status. Only Italy can do that, maybe, and Jamaica a red stripe. But those are the only places there it is allowed. I think I did a mediation once, and we hosted. It was a large multi-party mediation, and we hosted it at the Culinary Institute of America, which is where they instruct young chefs. And every hour or 2 hours, they would come out with platters of new things, delicious food. And we could not get a resolution. Everyone said, I think we need to meet again. We need to meet next month. And we would meet, and then there was no resolution, and we need to meet next month. And we realized the food is too good. People don't want to end the process. So we canceled going to the Culinary Institute of America, and we went to a bad hotel, a Holiday Inn nearby. And for lunch, we had bad rubber chicken, and we got a resolution that day. So you do not want your parties to be too comfortable, but it's good for them to be. I think one of the things that I say is, if you're divorcing someone and you're trying to figure out your vacation schedule, sometimes it's better for them to be sitting in their bed with their laptop with a glass of Merlot on the bedside table, and they can take their time, and they can have their mom on the speakerphone. Do we want Christmas or Easter? It can help your parties be at their best to give them a little bit of distance. And technology can give them convenience. It can give them time. That can be a gift. So you don't have to do the same thing of get everyone in the room and we are not leaving until we have an agreement.
Colin,
video mediation is more flexible.
Something really important is capacity building, and some of the questions focused on that. Is it important for the parties to be tech savvy? Using technology actually requires some sort of knowledge and skills. How do we overcome such challenges like that?
I think one of the reasons why Zoom has achieved so much traction is because it is relatively simple. And I think people understand how it works, it's reliable, and it's not overly confusing. When I use a platform like WebEx, and I'm a nerd, I love technology. There are so many options, it's overwhelming, and it can make the mediator feel anxious. To do a video mediation, you do not have to be a techie. You do not have to be a nerd. You do not have to be someone who knows everything about computers. We need to establish a baseline level of competence and understanding for using a particular tool. And then, but I don't think that you should just dive in if you've never practiced doing a video mediation. I don't think it's a good idea your first practice should be with a party. I think you need to have a simulation and try out the tool before you create breakout rooms. Try that on another call with some friends. Go create some breakout rooms, see how it works, because you don't want to be experimenting in front of your parties. But I do think that basic technologies like Zoom they're simple enough that people who are not super technical, they can use them and they can be successful with them. So that's what I'm trying to do, is train everyone on how to use these tools so they have enough competence that they feel confident doing it in a live mediation.
Thanks, very useful. Something related to future. Rafael Lobo is saying, thanks for the presentation. What is your vision once the tribunals and lawyers will start to get back and will go to the same ways of dealing with conflicts? Can you give some advice or ideas on how to make the new reset for a new normality?
Yeah. Can I just have this? What I want to also ask you. I think when everything of this pandemic will be over and will be finally, we can go out without any fear to hug and kiss people and so on. Do you think that we will be back to the usual e-meeting, person meetings, conference, or it will remain something on this technology, the force of the technology video conference?
Well, I may be a little bit biased, but I think that the world of 5 months ago is gone forever. We will never go back to that world, because what has happened now is we have had an education for everyone on the planet. How can we interact using technology? And some of the things are frustrating, but some of the things people are learning to like. We now see businesses here in Silicon Valley, they are passing regulations and rules that say you do not have to come back to the office. If you want to work from home, you can. And that's not going to end when the pandemic ends. Twitter has now said their new policy is anyone can work from home for the rest of their career. Facebook has now made that change too. I think what is going to change, the judges and the lawyers, and maybe the mediators, they are not going to be the ones who say, we want to do online forever. It is going to be the parties. The parties are the ones who are going to realize this is more convenient, this is more flexible, I like it better. We have launched court online dispute resolution programs in 50 or 60 courts in the United States. What we have found is that 85% of the resolutions through those court ODR programs are happening at a time when the court is closed. So that means late on a weekday or on the weekends. And that is because parties do not want to resolve their disputes between 9 and 5 Monday through Friday. They're busy, they're working, they have lives. So the parties are going to insist on the convenience that they have learned that they now can get through technology. So some things will go back. The courts will reopen. There will be paper filings. There will be in-person hearings. But I think that this change, this pandemic it is the nose of the camel into the tent. And slowly but surely, these technologies will become more and more common. And our grandchildren will think it is crazy that we had to drive downtown and park our car and go stand in line and fill a piece of paper. That will sound to them like the 1800s, because everything that they do is going to be online. They will save face-to-face interaction only for their friends and their family members, and everything else. This technology we are using today will seem so primitive and inefficient to our grandchildren, because they will have fast, high quality, perfect audio, sharp video conferencing that will appear with one click. So it's not where we are today, it's where we're going. And I believe video mediation is the gateway drug to all of ODR. This is step one, but we have many more steps to go.
So this is not science fiction, Colin.
It is not. Technology these days is resolving most of the disputes in the world, and it is only going to grow. What people are not ready for is the idea that artificial intelligence will be able to serve as a mediator or as an arbitrator, and that we will build a new justice system that uses technology to play that role. People are not ready for that yet, but I am telling you it is coming. And just like in the future, we will have computers driving all of our cars. In the future, we will have computers running our justice system. And it will seem that the human era of justice, with courtrooms and robes and wigs and gavels, that will seem like ancient history.
Great, Colin. I mean, I don't know, we could stay hours and hours to talk with you and think about the future and your vision, our vision. I believe, I really believe like you that this pandemic, despite all the problems and the death that caused, at least is going to leave us with a step forward to the technology, to the use of technology, or smart working, as we say, and so on. So great. I mean, I was reading a lot of the chat, and you got a lot of invitations from Jamaica, from Brazil, from everywhere. And by the way, if someone of our participants wants to know more about ODR, about your work, how you can be reached, and what do you do?
And the slides, your slides.
Sure, I will share the slides with Leo, and he can circulate. I would urge you to visit odr.info, which is the National Center for Technology and Dispute Resolution. I would also urge you to visit ICODR, ICODR.org, the International Council for Online Dispute Resolution. We have a global online dispute resolution field. Leo knows well. He's come to many of our conferences. All of you are welcome. There's many things happening in the field. It is going very quickly. So if this is something that interests you and you would like to get more involved, please come to one of those websites and introduce yourself, and we will put you to work. Yeah. But thank you so much for the invitation, Leo. Adi, thank you for the great facilitation. I wish I could hang out with all of you and we could all go have dinner together now, but it will have to be virtual.
Okay, again, thank you very, very much. And we will go ahead with this masterclass next in 2 weeks on June 3rd. We will move on Wednesdays. So because now with the summer, maybe Friday afternoon from European, so I think people want to go out. So from June 3rd, we will have a panel, and we will talk about mandatory versus voluntary mediations, the Italian model. I will show the results of our 20 years of experience and in Italy, how this model has been modified and in different jurisdictions, Greece, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Serbia, and others. And then on June 17, we will have Dwight Golan, our friend Dwight Golan, and he is a mediator out of Boston, and he will talk about the use of evaluation in mediation, how we can use evaluation, what an evaluation is. And I'm sure, with this international context, everyone has a different definition of evaluation. But we will keep in contact. You have published a lot of articles in mediate.com. This is another
That's right.
website that you have present. And feedbacks, now we have a poll. Feedback is of course excellent on this session. And again, thank you, and let me do one thing.
The ritual at the end of each masterclass, we unmute all participants and we ask everyone to say goodbye in their own language.
And so I want to save the chat as well. I want to save the chat and maybe send to you. There are so many questions that have been not answered. And let's have a round of applause and ciao. Colin.
Oh my God.
Gracias. Si paga per domenica, metti avanti le mani, eventualmente ci vediamo.
Bye bye.
Applausi. Press the button.
Bye.
See you next time.
Con la che programmi ci sono programmi per domenica.